Good afternoon and evening to all of those joining, and welcome to the webinar, Taking Tribal to the Next Level, Adding Betting to the On-Property Experience. My name is David Bretnitz. I'm Senior Director of Sales for Kambi, and I'll be your moderator today alongside a great group of individuals, which we'll introduce in just a moment here. As many of you know, tribal gaming is unique, but it also provides immense opportunities for operators and suppliers alike, sports betting providers. It really allows the operators to add another value-added revenue stream for tribes to utilize, as well as to drive long-term sustainable revenues. So with that being said, I'd like to go ahead and introduce some of the panelists that we have with us today, starting with Rich Roberts, President of Mohegan Digital. Welcome, Rich.
Oh, thank you, David. Happy to be here. Just to give it back a little bit of background of the last dozen years in the gaming space. Worked with Mohegan Resorts with a platform launch in New Jersey back in 2014-15 with Sport Tech. Since then, I've worked with Sport Tech on their ADW, had a peer-to-peer sports wagering product, worked with New England Sports Network to position themselves for sports betting in Massachusetts. And as Dave mentioned, for the last 2 years, I've been the president of digital for Mohegan.
Awesome. Thank you, Rich. We also have Hugh Offer with us, a sportsbook manager at one of our great sportsbooks out at Elan Resort and Casino in Washington State. Hugh, thank you again for joining us today. And yeah, I'll go ahead and let you kind of give a little bit of background on where you come from and what you have going on at Elan as well.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, I had grown up all my life in Las Vegas and managed sportsbooks out there for probably 15 years and have moved around and have worked with Kambi for probably the last 5 years and worked for Penn Gaming and was able to launch several books for them. Then went and had the opportunity to come out here to Elan to launch with Tribal Gaming and to launch a sportsbook out here in Washington. And the experience has been very, very rewarding. It's been exciting, and we're able to present the product out here. It's been great.
Awesome. Thank you, Hugh. And we also have Brett Caleb with us from the CEO of Desert Diamond Mobile, one of our great operators out in Arizona. Brett, thank you for joining us today as well.
No problem. My name is Brett Caleb. I am the CEO of Desert Diamond Mobile. We are the only tribal branded sportsbook operator online in the state of Arizona. I've spent about 19 years in the online gaming space. I've built 5 gaming platforms, about 40 games. The one a lot of people know is if you play poker at World Poker Tour online, you play at Club WPT, which I created 14 years ago. Advise about a half dozen gaming companies, and excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Brett. And finally, we have Jeremy Tyra, partner at Kyproc Capital. Jeremy, thank you for joining us today. Really look forward to getting your insight on some of these topics as well. But prior to doing so, maybe give us a little bit of your background as well.
Yeah, thanks, David. Appreciate you having us on, and thanks to the folks at IGB for putting this together. As David said, my name is Jeremy Tyra. I'm a partner at Kyproc Capital. Kyproc is a venture capital firm focused on making global investments in the regulated gaming space. We concentrate our efforts and our thesis really around omni-channel solutions for regulated gaming, early stage, but really more kind of active growth capital businesses. My partners have a lot of operating experience globally. I've spent the last 20 years here, primarily working in the United States across the tribal, charitable, some commercial, and the lottery sectors. The family has invested for almost 40 years along with the Native American tribes. Back when my grandfather founded what was then Mega Bingo, became Mega Mania, and is now, of course, Every. And so it's a place that we've invested in a lot, and we know tribes are continuing to invest in the on-premise, on-property proposition for their customers. So thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you all for for those introductions. So let's go ahead and get started here. I think where I'd really like to start here is really to kind of engage and get feedback on evaluating new tribal opportunities, setting out the opportunity. Each new state, each tribe, each opportunity really does require that individualized approach. So while we don't really need to reinvent the wheel, I think each time there isn't that kind of one size fits all approach either. So I think each tribe's strategy is different. Their goals vary. And I think for those reasons alone, there's a lot of planning that must go into each new opportunity. And so, Rich, maybe I'll start with you. As you're evaluating new opportunities, new jurisdictions, new operators, what are some of those kind of key points tribes should consider as they embark on this journey? Kind of in that retail space of sports betting, but I think just holistically, when you kind of look at the overall sports betting industry and those new jurisdictions, what are some of those key points that you really look for and that tribe should consider?
From our perspective at Mohegan, with Connecticut opening up about a year and a half ago, and then Ontario about 8 months ago for us, it was where we have our casino operations, right? First and foremost, we're looking at, where we have a footprint, and not necessarily using the Mohegan brand. Up in Ontario, we use Fallsview brand, so it's Play Fallsview. That's number one. Number two, if we don't have an operation in that given jurisdiction, is do we have a database? Do we have a name recognition? Because ultimately, when it comes to tribal gaming, we look at it as we have a brand that we've been building for 25 years, and multiple brands in our case. And if we can't take advantage of those brand names, then we have to take a look at can our operations or other things make it worthwhile to enter that market?
Sure. And I think, Jeremy, you spoke about starting to invest in that retail experience with tribal operators. What advice would you give some of those operators, at the onset? Do you have key requirements from an investment perspective that you evaluate or that you guide tribes on evaluating as they're entering this new space?
Yeah, I mean, David, I guess from our perspective, it's really working with the ventures themselves. So the companies that are supplying technology and solutions, to the operators to help support what they're trying to do to further those brands or move into new jurisdictions, like Rich said. And so I think at a high level, you touched on it kind of in the open. It's just been our experience, and this is probably this way around the world with operators, but particularly in tribal country, there's hardly a one size fits all. There's lots of unique circumstances. You've got unique governments and leadership and priorities. And so it's not just selling to business executives and trying to grow new revenue streams. You've got to come in as partners, and tribes make great partners, but it takes a lot of work. And you have to understand what their needs are and what they're trying to achieve. It might be year over year compounded revenue growth, but ultimately the tribes are planning for, generations, looking 50, 60 plus years out. And so at the end of the day, I think it's just coming in to start to understand what the tribes need. And then there are many great ways to come provide them solutions rather than just saying, here's what you need.
Sure. No, that's great. I think we could probably all agree on that. I think really understanding the strategies of each one of those tribes, as I mentioned earlier, they do all vary. And I think you can't push an agenda. It has to be what works for them, what works for, supporting the communities, that those tribes, have relying on them. And so I think that's very important to really listen, to really understand the goals going forward. I think, Brett, for you, it might be a little bit different in Arizona, or maybe it's not different. You're this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of layers to this, right? It's not just there's one answer and that's what you should do. I think that you have to start with what is the goals of the organization, the tribal organization you're working with, right? In our case, this was a multi-generational play. The internet's not going anywhere. Even though that's what they used to say in, the year 2000, there was too many websites and this thing was a fad. But online gaming is not going anywhere. And if you think about, what is the goals of the organization that you're working with, our job as leadership, our job as experts in this area is to also, help set their expectations and help educate them, because they only know what they know, right? In Arizona, there was 20 licenses, and on day one, which was September, a year and a half ago, all you saw was FanDuel, DraftKings, and Kevin Hart, right? And that was everywhere. And we didn't even launch for 6 months after the regs came out and everything was live. And so I think you really have to be able to manage the expectations and help them educate, because what is their long-term goal? Because sportsbook, a solo sportsbook, and we're a single state operator, is a low margin business, right? We don't have the support of surrounding casino on the online side. Lucky for us, we have 4 retail establishments. We're building a 5th property we just broke ground on. We have 3 retail sports books. So we have a very well-recognized brand within the community and within the local player in Arizona. So that's very helpful in the decision that we had, which was control our own destiny, compose our own technical stack, compose a technical stack with great partners, make the decision that we weren't going to sell up our license, because of the 20 original licenses in Arizona, and 10 went to sports teams and 10 went to tribes. And that was another interesting component, which is there's 23 federally recognized tribes in the state of Arizona, and they only gave out 10 licenses. So it was a from day one. And we wrote a 100-page thesis on why Desert Diamond deserved the license and why the nation deserved to have a license, and we were able to win one. But it's understanding, like, what are you trying to do? And if you do sell off your license because you don't have the expertise in house and you're not comfortable with taking the risk that comes with building everything or bringing everything together, then you really have to understand what are the pros and cons of that. And I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, which was if you choose a partner, make sure that partner is going to stick around for the long term. I mean, Arizona, we've seen multiple big brands just eject out of the market because it's too competitive for them, or they couldn't find the right business mix for them in this market.
Brett, what was the differentiator for you, and I think the tribe as a whole? You touched on it. You could have sold that access to somebody else to come in and operate it. What really was that key differentiator for the tribe in Arizona to go and operate it on theirself? And was there ever any sort of, concern with any cannibalization of the online with the retail, or did they look at it as kind of a complementing, vertical that would obviously, they would both benefit from it?
From day one, we've had support of tribal leadership and everyone in the tribe really in the mantra of controlling your own destiny. That's just kind of something that they've done throughout their history, which is always take matters into their own hands. I'm the type of guy that wants to shoot the 3-pointer at the end of the game. So, we're going to make it or we're going to miss it, but we're going to do it together. And so I really gelled and respected that view of the world, which is, we know our place in the market. We know we have a brand that resonates with people. We know this is complementary. It's just a digital property at the end of the day. We have 4 retail properties you can walk into, and now we have a 5th digital property. But if you think about the advantages that come with that, it's not just about making money in this. It's about extending your brand beyond the casino walls. It's about creating that digital shield, right? If you don't have a sports book and your competitor have a sports book, there is opportunity for them to take away players from you. You're collecting a tremendous amount of valuable data. And for us, having our own brand meant that we control customer support. We control the interactions between the customers, because online sportsbooks are a very lonely place. At the end of the day, online anything is kind of a lonely place in a lot of ways, right? You're just interacting with your phone. And, it's not like walking to the casino and you walk into Rich's property, Hugh's property, and, everyone's going crazy and they're cheering at the craps table. And that's just not happening online. So where do you interact with those players? Well, you interact them through marketing, obviously, but you also interact them through customer support when they have trouble with payments and things like that. And so we really wanted to control that piece of it as well and create that local vibe around it.
Nice. That's great. Yeah, appreciate that. Hugh, you really are the boots on the ground in the retail sports book at A-Line A. Operationally, what are some of those important steps, I think, to consider pre-regulation leading up to launch. I think we all know that, states have their compacts with, the state. They also have, the Tribal Gaming Authority. There's all these different stakeholders. What is it like from, I think, an educational perspective, to get everybody on the same page, and I think even beyond that, what are some of the pre-planning type steps that can take place for tribes as they're really starting to evaluate their place in the market?
With doing that, everything starts with the relationships that you have with the tribes. You've got to get on board with them and help them understand in the simplest ways how sports betting and what we're going to be able to bring to the table. So no matter where you are, each, as you mentioned earlier, that each one can have a different mindset of where they want to go. But, you work with what is given from the state and from the local area and bring all that together as one great revenue stream that we can do. And when you start with the retail end of being brick and mortar, and you can win those people, like Brett was saying, because we can create that vibe here. So as the online perspective comes down the road, all of those things can be put together and you have a cohesive unit between the local tribe, because that's the first thing that you have to do is build that relationship there so I can see it through their eyes. So everything that I build going forward and how we want to construct exactly how the sports book and how we want to create this relationship have to see it through their eyes. And once you're successful with that and always having, it's a very easy relationship. There's no, everything ends up to be very good when you take the time and you listen to what they have to say, because it's so new that a lot just don't understand. And working with working with Kambi, the time that I have has made it very easy to present these things to the tribe here and how you would present it to each tribe. It makes again, it is the relationships as we're trying to do with the guests. It works the same with the state and with every tribal leader. That's what you have to do first, is build that base and build from there, because we all have the same goals of being able to, as I say, build members of my fan club. If we can do that together, it's going to be successful. And it's just it's patience and listening.
Oh, perfect. That's great. I think as we kind of move forward a little bit here, we talk about kind of integrating that sports betting offering into the existing retail experience. I think for many of us, we know that tribes are some of the most knowledgeable gaming operators, in this space. With that being said, I think there's also this uneasiness or maybe even a lack of confidence that they can operate these sports books, on their own. Maybe that's from, the lack of education of just, understanding all the tools and the resources and the support that different vendors can bring to them. But Rich, what does that look like? Is the sports betting industry kind of looking at this incorrectly? That's kind of causing some of this confusion. Is it always about what you can generate in GGR? Is it always about trying to go toe to toe with the tier ones and the marketing spend? How do you see that? And I think how do you think tribes can fit into it? And what can you maybe give them now that might even provide a little bit more confidence that they can operate this on their own, that they are able to do it?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of everything you just talked about. And if we break it down, there's a lot to unpack here, David. But with that, I think first is there are more tricks to the trade when it comes to sports betting, particularly along the trading side. And I think that's the fear of the unknown. I think we all have that. And, having the right partner to do that is important. So when we look at up in Ontario, where we launched with Kambi online first, we will be having the Falls View Sportsbook, I think up and running sometime August, September, with the Kambi technology too. I think the important part of that is having a trusted partner to do that. So the fear of taking on something new is not there. But from an operational perspective, here in Connecticut, Mohegan is a resort, it's a large property, building something, sportsbook here that represents what Mohegan is. We did build, right? And it's a beautiful sports book. And certainly, I think the biggest on the East Coast and one of the biggest that's here in the US right now. In Ontario, though, it's going to be a very nice and large sports book, but it's going to fit the marketplace. so, we talked about earlier is that each operator's got to, tribal operator's got to look at, who their customer is. What do they want out of the sports book? Is it an acquisition tool to bring in new people? Probably, yes. Is it an engagement for the existing customers? Yes. We look at the digital side, and Brett touched on it before. It's a brand that people can take with them when they leave the property. But we've also found that it's also a great acquisition tool to also bring digital people to the retail property. So these are the basic tenets that we look at in terms of, how do we want to approach each market properly, and what are we going to, GGR is always a top line, right? How much is that going to bring in, but also what's the engagement, what's the opportunities within the customer, and new customers that we can utilize with sports betting.
Yep. And Brett, you might even be able to build upon that a little bit further. I think one of the big unknowns too for a lot of tribes is that they have to have these massive, operational teams, trading teams. I know Rich kind of talked on it. I don't think they understand all that, Kambi might bring or that other operators might bring, to them, and the resources and the support that they provide. You've had great success in Arizona without these massive teams. Like, what have you done that I think, or I guess, how have you made it that, so efficient to where you've been able to have that success with those smaller teams? What's the difference been for you there?
Yeah, look, we're a team of 11. We'll probably be at 18 by the end of this year. Part of it is about, when I talk about technology and composability, right? So being able to bring in the right partnerships and the right technical pieces and the right tools so that you can fundamentally lean on technology instead of human capital. I think the other part of it is understand, again, this goes back to like setting expectations and what are you trying to achieve, right? If you look at the Arizona market, I'm never going to outspend DraftKings, FanDuel, MGM, or Caesars. It's just that's just a reality for the world I live in, right? But I can be right behind them, and I can have a profitable business in the fullness of time, and I can understand what my advantages are compared to those big behemoths that are spending, 50, 100, $1 billion on marketing across the globe. And they have, DraftKings has 3,400 employees. Divide that by the number of jurisdictions they have in the US, and you're talking about like 160, 140 people per state, right? If you just called even, I have 11. So, there's efficiencies that can be had in technology, and that's really what best partners and compose the best technical stack, because it's no longer the case where like you have to build your own platform and build everything yourself and spend doing that. And if you're a multi-state operator, that's strategy. But the flip side of that is if you can find the right partnerships and compose the right stack, you can take the best of the best that really smart people have built and use it efficiently and keep your costs down and really drive yourself towards that profitability marker. Because at the end of the day, we do want to build a profitable business, but for all the reasons that Rich just went over, there's all these intangible effects that have actually a really big impact to the overarching business of your casino group. Because again, you can't look at like a single state operator sportsbook or a multi-state operator who just has sportsbook, or maybe sportsbook and casino in some states. That's just got to be part of the puzzle that you're weaving across your organization and side of this, because you will get people that come right back and gain affinity from the online brand that say, you know what? It's Thursday night. I'm going out with my friends. Where am I going to go? I'm going to go to that casino that I'm playing on my phone because it's top of mind. There's awareness, and you've messaged me in the right time because when I'm active on the app. So
I think one additional question there, just kind of the unknowns that new tribal operators, might have issues with, or maybe the lack of confidence with. What sort of value has the online sportsbook provided for the retail experience, the on-property experience at Desert Diamond? I know there's this kind of, misconceived perception that it might cannibalize it by moving everybody online or trying to get people to, sign up for the online sportsbook, that could have a negative effect on, retail revenues, not just sports betting, but on the rest of it. How has that provided value on property?
Look, there's enough published data out there now, especially from New Jersey, that just flat out proves there's no cannibalization going on. You see, new activated card holders, you see, or Players Club holders. We're just kind of scratching the surface of our kind of integration between retail and mobile. For Desert Diamond, the journey was, number one, get live. So that we could hold our license up, because we had to be live within a certain amount of time. Number two, get things hardened and stable. And then number three was bring connection to the retail side. So, in the coming months, you're going to see us connecting our loyalty cards. You're going to see us have a great deal of affinity between the retail and mobile. But at the end of the day, like, you're going to, take the simple example of communication, right? You don't know as a retail operator, once they leave your door, what they're doing. And if you're talking to your players on Tuesday and they just happen to be with their families, or they're at the kids' soccer game, or doing whatever, you're just knocking on a dead door, right? But if you know that, hey, on Wednesday they always seem to boot up the app and they're always kind of playing, well, then that's a really good time to try to engage them, to getting them back on property, and you start to create this flywheel where they're like, you know what, I'm not going to go to the competitor because I'm starting to build loyalty through the online presence to get back to the retail property. And we know just from studies with other businesses I've worked with and other tribes I've worked with, that when you have a connection between the mobile experience and the experience, and those players are carded and connected on both sides, we see an uplift of spend, we see an uplift of more trips to the property, and that data is just really encouraging and will only get better the more interconnected those two things are.
No, that's awesome. Jeremy, where do you go ahead, Richie?
No, I was gonna just agree with Brett on that. And we've had our loyalty card hooked up for over a year now, and not only are they more frequent players, but the ARPU that they provide is certainly more significant than the average non-card holder. So, and that's an important part when a tribe looks at going into gaming, is getting that reward card lined up. And the other thing that Brett mentioned is spending against the big operators. If you've built a brand and you trust your brand, you don't need to spend or even think about spending to that. Just focus on your core customer base, get them over to your product. They will be loyal to you just as long as you're delivering them a product that they can be loyal with.
No, that's awesome.
I tell you, the other thing is education. And we talked about education of the tribal members and tribal leadership. I think education on the retail side is really important, right? Because the more buy-in you get at every single level of your retail organization, the more opportunity there's going to be, and the more ideas that are going to flow out. Because I don't know every single nook and cranny of a retail establishment, right? But we have roundtable discussions with leadership, we have roundtable discussions with directors and managers, and help them understand what's happening online is really, really important. Not only do customers come up to them on the floor and ask questions, but the fact is the more collaborative we can be, and again, this is just like tribal level, the retail side sometimes hasn't had the exposure to digital, right? This is a brand new thing to them, even though they all play games at home, right? They all have an Uber account and they all do all these interactions online. Online gambling is very new. And so being able to educate staff, being able to educate and get buy-in from the stakeholders at the retail side is going to blossom all kinds of new ideas. And again, this is free marketing at the end of the day. Right. And that's where I don't have to spend as much money as some of the bigger companies that are in this state, and I can still attract players at a low CPA that way.
Yeah,
that's great.
David, I think that's right. I mean, I want to just from the investment side, this is really kind of the core of the thesis of what Kiprock's doing in this space is regulation change and acceleration of the digital channels. But just, I mean, Brett made a great point about the colleague side, and I want to speak to that. But the data we've talked about, right? So, let's look at the North American side, right? BetMGM's latest investor conference, I think 3 to 6 times higher spend, right? Those in customers that engaged in both channels versus a single. Well, that makes sense, right? You got more engagement. It's early days here, right? In the U.S. side, right? There's just not that many digital offerings. I mean, yeah, we got 36 sports betting states and that comes in, but we're BetMGM, I think, is seeing those numbers as we drill down as states that have iCasino and betting with retail establishment. And there's lots of compelling data there. But the real reason we got into leaning into this is kind of two things. One, as Rich said, or Britt said, you don't have to make forever decisions. You don't have to have the whole thing, right? There's no single solution provider, that just comes in and does everything from payments to risk to, the whole thing, right? And you don't have to make those forever decisions today, as Britt was talking about, right? There are microservices and tech stacks, and you can build that. And so we invest on that side. But the really compelling part is in the more mature markets, right? So let's take the Rank Group, for example, right? You got 52 venues across the UK. You got digital brands that have been established. So this is a mature, regulated, digital and retail market. And, over there, our managing partner led the omni-channel efforts to sit between those retail properties and digital. And it was a challenge, right? Even in those mature markets, educating the colleagues is not enough just to spin up a digital site or have a new channel for the customer to engage. That's the start, right? But then the real work continues. Over there, we know that, those customers that engaged in both channels were worth 3 to 4 times more than somebody that engaged. And that's really what we're talking about here, right? Is about profit. It's a return on investment standpoint. And so that's where the tribes, in our opinion, have a big leg up. They're going to be perpetual operators, right? They're sovereign nations. They have invested in these brands and this subject matter expertise of how to run these gaming businesses. And their customers are engaging in digital channels today. So they have trusted brands. And if they do a good digital proposition, and as Britt said, if they motivate those colleagues in the retail place to really help promote that and lean into it, then everybody wins. I mean, in the UK, I think they published some of that data, right? Like 44% of digital NGR came from customers that had a single account and wallet they could use across that once they launched. I mean, this is back like 2019, 2020, 2020. And COVID's going to continue to accelerate that, right? So having the retail properties is a huge value to create loyalty. Having the digital, as Rich said, brings the engagement. And from our perspective, if sports betting was a zero-sum proposition, meaning if the operator just always broke even, it is a fabulous tool to invest in our perspective. And so all the profits you can get from it is just kind of extra for the tribes, is the way we see it.
Yeah, that's great. I think that the increased value that those players provide to the retail establishment, to the on-property experience, I think is a nice conduit to Hugh here. Hugh, what value has that added outside of the walls, on property at A-Line A, from an engagement standpoint? I know when I've been on property, at the opening, seeing the table game play, I mean, the table games were packed, the casino floor was packed. What engagement has that been able to provide outside of the sports book across those other verticals and across the rest of that experience that they get when they come on property?
When they come on property, so we're kind of building it backwards. We're going from the retail side to when we're going to be able to go to the digital side, eventually go there. But the base of guests that we come in here and the experience that they get, and that being able to take them and expose them to, yes, we have sports bettors, but maybe they haven't been into the casino. And you're right, typical sports players are going to gravitate to table games. And then so now there's an influx of energy into the whole property. And then once you're able to help understand what sports betting is, because some don't know, and we're at least here at A-Line, we're very fortunate to have the markets between where Portland is and up north to be able to. We aren't like one of the behemoths, but we can build loyalties because we take the time to help people help the guests understand what exactly we're doing. Here are the options you have. We have great restaurants. And you're right, the energy that comes within the building itself is fantastic, because the atmosphere and enjoyment of everything that we're able to build here, that those loyalties are going to transition to the digital side. And they've already had the experience of coming. And one of the biggest advertisers we have, the players that have come in, like you say, outside of the walls, talk about coming and how great it is here and all the amenities that we have. So yes, we have sports betting, but we're able to tap into a guest base that has never been to property. So now that's going to transition to, what the tribe is able to present here in the casino itself. We just built a big, beautiful, brand new hotel. And so now everything's going to work together to be able to come into, to visit property. And then the advertiser is going to be, the guests leaving and saying, boy, oh boy, we want to go and we want to experience this again. And that spreads out amongst the whole area. And then when we get the digital footprint of what we want to do, that's just it's just another tool, and it's going to be a wonderful thing to have that goes along. So it's just going to feed into each other. We're kind of doing it the opposite way, from the retail end first to the digital platform. But it is an exciting time, from the retail end and where we are and what we're able to present and be able to get more guests in here to experience the whole experience of what the property has to offer.
I think, Hugh, beyond the physical features and the physical assets that you're talking about there, I know you brought in the digital piece too. How do you further engage with those customers when it actually comes to the sportsbook offering itself? How do you guys do it? If you don't have a massive marketing spend, like some of the tier ones do, how do you create that compelling and engaging offering that gets people to come on property, that gets people to come back? How do you really reach them through the actual offering itself?
So we reached them. So when we opened, it was in October 20 of this last year, and being able to, we're in the midst of football season. So a lot, football fans are everywhere. They want to have the opportunity to bet on it. So what we were able to do is help educate, help them understand. There's no question that's too silly or for them to ask. We are always putting it out there. I myself will go out there, and the supervisors, as Brett says, we have probably, I have 12 employees. So we always make the time to go out and talk with them and help, whether it's grabbing a sheet and helping them understand exactly what the wagers are. That's building the loyalties of helping them understand what sports wagering is, because you can walk up to a kiosk and it doesn't give you that experience. To now get them to come to the counter, and we explain everything, the inner workings of why does this look like this? Why does this pay this? And help educate and understand and be in the patience of taking the time. It's building those loyalties and explaining and help educate is a huge portion of what we do, because then you build loyalties because they know that they can come in and they can ask any question and they're going to get help with any situation that they have. They're going to get help that way. And that's one of the biggest things that we promote here.
No, that's awesome.
Can we pound on that point a little bit? Like,
yeah,
education.
Yep.
Jeremy touched on this earlier. Hughes said a great thing, which is like, it's super early. Like, everyone needs to understand that sports betting in America is very, very new for most people, and most people don't understand it at all. Even though every single sports announcer thinks that they basically understand everything, they're just regurgitating the teleprompter at the end of the day. And the fact is, this isn't London, where there's a bet shop on every corner, and we grew up with that, right? We had a Starbucks on every corner, so we think we can know coffee as Americans, but American punters don't really understand the nuances of the bet. And a lot of online betting is very complex, right? There's a lot of different optionality. The screens are very clustered with things. And on the retail side, it's intimidating. Like, it's intimidating to walk up to the window and place a bet. Like, you kind of don't want to do it a lot of times. And then you walk up to the kiosk, and as Hugh said, they can be confusing, right? So the more you can educate and give players the comfort to interact with you and the comfort to ask the questions, and don't think it's too late to educate, right? Or you're too late to market, because the majority, Arizona's been alive for a while now, and still the majority of people don't realize sports betting is legal, or they don't understand like what they can and can't do, or what are the rules to actually playing, or how comfortable are they with putting their money online, right? It's taken the world a long time. I came from Web 1. And so it's taken the world a long time to get comfortable with putting their money online and being able to make payments and do things like that. And even though it's easy to buy something at, Nordstroms.com, it's difficult still to put your money online to gamble with. And so the more we can get comfortable and trusting our brand and trust that we're here,
Mhm.
the more we're going to be able to build that affinity with the customer.
But and I think to add to that, Brett, is the hurdles it takes to open up an online account. In some states, it's harder to open up a sports betting account than it is to open up a bank account.
That's true.
Yeah, and so
Very
that
true.
if you go through the process, even here in Connecticut, you give your email address and your name, and then you go through your address, your social security number, then you get that verified, and then you get these 3 KBA questions, which we've all seen before. What card have you driven before? What address is yours? Yeah, and at that point, it's like, okay, now you can deposit money. Oh, but by the way, here are the only ways you can deposit money. And you get through the process, and even with when we have events here on site here in Connecticut, and we have somebody with the customer, right? Your core demo, for like a casino side, down on the sports betting side, it's 20 minutes.
Wow.
Right. And I mean, just because the whole process, these KBA questions can confuse anybody. If you've been paying taxes for more than 20 years, there's going to be questions you're going to be like, I don't remember. So, so there's a lot that goes into not just the education that Brett pointed out in terms of betting, but the education of getting people to the point to be able to bet.
So we talk about education here. I think that's a nice little conduit into maybe our final topic here on safer gambling. What does that mean? How are you guys educating in regards to that? So we're talking about all the fun aspects of, engagement, getting people on property, getting people onto the online sportsbook as well. What are some of those safeguards that you guys are putting in place? And I know some of these things might be proprietary type things, so we don't need to share all that, but just kind of high level, 30,000 foot view. What do you think are maybe some of the issues that operators may need to deal with, or that you are dealing with right now? And what are some of the things that they need to think about going forward that's going to provide confidence, in the long-term strategy, that's going to provide integrity and then ultimately protect the customer base too?
And to that point, the challenges that what's been put in place in Connecticut is for that protection, right? So it's not anything that you can back off on and make it an easier process. It's just the education to get people to that. So I think in most of the jurisdictions now, they've done a pretty good job in ensuring the safety of opening up an account. And I think what you're speaking to, David, is the responsible gaming aspects of it.
Yeah.
And certainly Ontario, those who may have worked in Ontario or work in Ontario, they've put together a very significant process that a responsible gaming check. Here in Connecticut, Mohegan has partnered with Yale and is putting together an app that is going to really reach the people where they are and help them understand, responsible gaming, problem gambling in the place where they're going to receive it. They're playing on their app, they're playing on their phone, so delivering, a message, delivering a true app that's going to take them through a process that doesn't replace necessarily a phone call, but adds to and gives that first opportunity for players to reach out and get the support that they need.
I think it's about being a good listener. I think if your staff is trained appropriately, from VIP to customer support to marketing, and they understand that this is our responsibility as operators. We're supposed to be providing entertainment, and when that entertainment becomes addiction, or that entertainment puts in jeopardy aspects of your life that could cause you harm, we have a social responsibility as the operator to make sure that we have the highest level of standards and the highest level of expectations and the highest internal controls. I mean, it's one of the most important things that we talk about at Desert Diamond on a weekly basis is making sure that all of those things are covered off, and it's a whole combination of things, right? Making it really easy for you to reach out, for you to communicate with us, for you to self-select and opt in to be limited. And all of the things that go to that really need to be ingrained in your staff's mind, because when it comes to this human side of our business, this isn't about profit, and this isn't about handle. This isn't about anything. This is humans protecting other human beings and helping them understand and giving them the help that they need and deserve. And then as operators working together to improve that.
Yeah, David, I'd say from macro level investment standpoint, whether it's sports betting or another new digital vertical that you have to offer, your customer proposition, it just inherently gives you an identity, and it gives you data associated with that identity at its core, right? We still have 85%, I think, of all GGR in the United States is generated by cash in a slot machine, right? Mm-hmm. And while we've done well, I don't know where carded percentages of total databases have grown, over the last 5 years in retail, but there's still a big gap of people we don't know about. And within that comes a lot of responsible gaming opportunities that we have as we start to digitize, and ways to do that. There's ways to innovate, right? To use data and predictive analysis to give operators the tools to do what Britt's talking about, which is to protect those customers that they've invested in and built. And in some cases, on the tribal side, right, they've been building these brands for, decades and decades, right? There's a lot of trust. And so I think you'll see tribes continue to lead the way in this side, but it is a really important part, because at the end of the day, we all effectively operate in a privileged industry, right? Whether you're a supplier or whatever, this is not something that we can do without taking that responsibility seriously. So I think the tribal gaming regulatory agencies are some of the best, because they understand what's at stake for their governments, and they're going to be really diligent on this topic. And I think, you're probably talking with a group of people here that are leading the charge and actually doing that today in the trenches. So.
Definitely. It might be a nice little conduit to another question that we had come in. What is the appetite for digital assets, cryptocurrencies in the tribal gaming industry?
I think there's 2 points to that, right? I think from a perspective of being able to lower the costs of money in, money out, from a blockchain perspective, again, education with the regulators in each of the jurisdictions, I think that would be an open conversation. Unregulated securities being traded for sports betting or iGaming, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's about helping the regulators, and I think it's helping the industry understand the pros and the cons. The fact is I'm a partner in a sports crypto company, and I look at that market all the time, and it's what I find interesting. I'm U.S. passport holder, American citizen. I'm KYC poster child, and you know what? If I want to pay, instead of paying with a bank wire, I want to pay with ETH. Then why can't I pay? You know who I am. I'm just paying in a different currency, right? At the end of the day, and it's and so from my perspective, it's giving me as the operator the ability to have a new form of currency and a different type of wallet that comes in. I think there's a lot of efficiencies. Blockchain and crypto has gotten such a bad stigma over the last year, right? But the fact is it's just technology. At the end of the day, we're not going to talk about NFTs and blockchain for much longer, because it's just going to be fundamentally built in as technology that we'll use, and we'll refer to it as something else, right? It's just like the beginning of the internet, right? We don't talk about Java in our servers and things like that. We just fundamentally, it's embedded as part of the world that we operate in. And so, call it what you want, but that technology is not going away, and it'll just take time to integrate it within our environments, because we are a regulated industry at the end of the day, and there's a lot of rules, and there's a sandbox we play in.
Yeah, I think Brett's correct, but I think that the fundamental issue is, we've all been licensed in so many jurisdictions. Sports betting, iGaming is all about transparency. The historical of cryptocurrency is about secrecy. So until those bridges can be built, that's going to be the challenge, when it comes to crypto, with these regulators. I
got one more question, California related. the testy subject, but will Prop 27 return in November for voters to decide whether California licenses sports betting? Any thoughts from the group? Or
I thought it was next year. I thought it was next year.
Yeah,
it is. I think there's a chance that maybe they could get something done outside of the legislative session. I would say from our side, I think we think it's a long shot.
There's more bridges that need to be built before that's going to be successful.
Absolutely right.
We'll leave it at that.
Exactly.
yeah.
So
David,
guys, that's about all I have, I think, for today. But I guess maybe as we close things out, just some closing statements from everyone, just kind of where we think the industry is now, where we think it's going in the future, and just something for our audience to kind of take away.
I'll agree with Brett. I mean, we're just at the beginning of this in the United States. You know, we've got maybe half the states doing sports betting, which I don't think we're at half yet. We've got 5 or 6 states doing online gaming. You know, we do have the vast majority of states that have casinos. So at some point, it's going to catch up. But right now is the time for those who have the opportunity to, take the opportunity to see what you can do. And, there's a lot of, we've had a lot of good success so far over the last, I'd say, 10 years since New Jersey opened.
yeah, David, for me,
I would
I'd
say
you-
find your. Oh, go, Jeremy. Go.
No, I was just going to say you don't have to do it all yourself, right? There's lots of great partners and solutions, like we've said. So don't be afraid of that. At the end of the day, it's about customer experience and solving those operator pain points, right? And that's really, we're just starting to be multi-channel operators here. Omni-channel will take a long time to truly evolve. And but we know that it works and it's more profitable, and so as people lean into that, they'll win the day long term.
Oh, absolutely. We'll win the day, and being as the retail, like you say, the experience that we're going to be able to bring, and we're just scratching the surface of what sports betting and tribal can bring to the properties and to the guests. And it is educating them and being patient and understanding and helping everybody get on board with it. And as we do that, it's just gonna continue to grow beyond leaps and bounds.
And I would just add, find your sweet spot. You know, if you're a single state operator or you've got a multi-state retail locations, find that sweet spot where you fit into the market that's most advantageous for you. Do not worry about what everyone else is doing. Don't worry about the fact that, DraftKings and FanDuel are everywhere in my state. I can't avoid them no matter where I go. And I know where my spot is. I know where I provide value, and I know where I can be super local and really touch the players in a unique way to get them to experience everything that we're offering. So, I think that if you understand your expectations going into this and you find that space you want to operate in, I think you can create really a very valuable business across the board that's going to help you overall.
Yeah, and I think from a Kambi perspective, I think what everyone said, just to kind of sum it up, really continuing to provide that product offering that's competitive, that's engaging, that's compelling. I think bettors, as we know, they want to bet when it's exciting, when it's convenient for them. So remaining true to our roots of product first. I think ultimately that will help combat the marketing spend of some of the tier ones, but then also give our operators, tribal operators alike, the ability to be able to compete with those different competitors in the market. And I think that's the biggest thing for the ultimate, I think, goal of driving those long-term sustainable revenues for their communities and creating that on-property experience through the omni-channel experience too, I think, as that evolves over the coming months and years. So again, guys, really appreciate everybody joining us today. One thing I would like to mention, Kambi's Festival of Sportsbook is quickly approaching. That's a virtual event that we hold every year for the last several years. It's going to be held June 6th to the 9th. We'll have engaging and educational content covering online retail, kind of where we are in the industry now, where we're going in the future, We'll have different operators of ours, further speaking, I think, to just the challenges they face, the successes that they've had so far. And so it really is a great week to just kind of come together in a virtual capacity and learn more about the industry, learn more about what we can do to help support your goals and your ambitions. And hear from some of the industry's best. So
Thank
with
you,
that
David.
being said, that's all I have. And thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sure.